Welcome back to Pokemon Episode Summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 269, Love, Pokemon Style. The episode begins right where the last one left off, as we see a whole bunch of trainers in the crowd, including Gary and Harrison, watching Ash having lit the flame and listening to Goodshow's speech. The next day, Ash and the gang and all the other competitors had a good night's rest, and now they were up in the Athlete Village Pokemon Center building, where they were looking at a screen displaying the tournament matchups for the preliminary rounds. Ash saw that he, just as Mr. Goodshow had said, wasn't fighting just one opponent, but he was put into a group of 3 with a random-ass girl and none other than Vincent from The Legend of Thunder. I have to say, I forgot that Vincent was in the main series at all. That was a very cool surprise, and yeah, I'm definitely excited to see him in the main series. An actual connection to Legend of Thunder. Anyways, this group was known as Group H, and Brock then explained the specifics of how this next phase of the tournament would work. Essentially, the preliminary round would be a round robin. So Ash, the girl, and Vincent would all fight each other once, and you would get 3 points if you won a battle, 1 point if you tied, and no points for a loss. And the trainer who ended up getting the most points by the time they had battled the other 2 trainers would be declared the winner of the group and would move on to the top 16. As you would probably expect, Ash was confused, not really understanding what Brock had just explained, but he still was very confident that he could win regardless. Brock tried to explain how everything worked again, using a example of himself, Misty, and Mr. Goodshow in a group. However, Ash still didn't understand, and simply declared that he didn't need to know how much points everything was worth anyways, because he was just going to win both of the battles. Ash and the gang then walk out of the Pokemon Center so Ash could get prepared for his upcoming battles, only to be spotted by a girl who was one of Ash's upcoming opponents in Group H. She recognizes Ash and claims that she wants to talk to him, forcibly trying to drag him to a place where they could talk, but Ash denies her as he didn't know who she was. Wow, he clearly was not paying attention to anything at all, leading Misty and Brock to remind him that this girl was one of his upcoming opponents, and the girl confirms this, revealing her name as Macy, and stating that she would like to have a practice battle with Ash to see what he was about before their real battle. And also test out her own Pokemon to make sure they were in perfect condition as well, stating that she already knew of some of Ash's tactics, having studied up on some of his previous battles after looking them up in the database from the computer in her room. And she wanted to see if she could test out some of Ash's strengths to see if she could come up with a way to counter them, and also see if she could bring out his weaknesses, which she also apparently studied. Ash didn't believe that Macy knew everything about her, so he agreed to have a practice battle with her, even though Misty and Brock advised that it likely wasn't that great of an idea, since it would give Macy a potential advantage, since Ash just wanted to battle, man. And explained that even though Macy could get information on him and his Pokemon, he could also get information on her and her Pokemon. As the battle was about to begin, Macy tries to taunt Ash to weaken him a little bit, stating that she's had a lot of practice with her Pokemon, and they were very good. However, this just made Ash excited to battle, not scared whatsoever. So, the battle then began as Ash chose Pikachu, and Macy sent out her Vulpix. However, before either of them could make an attack, Vulpix and Pikachu were both captured in nets, much to everyone's shock, including Misty and Brock. Although Misty, Brock, and Ash were not shocked when the perpetrators of this trap revealed themselves as none other than Team Rocket, as they didn't even waste time doing their motto, as they grabbed the 2 nets and pedaled away on a bike together to escape. Ash and Macy pursued them as fast as they could, but since Team Rocket were riding their bikes down a hill, this hill was so steep that Ash eventually tripped, and Macy tried to grab him, but he began to fall and roll down the hill. But he was fortunately able to stop himself, as he grabbed on to the rock on the hill and pulled himself back up. However, he noticed that when Macy tried to grab him and pull him up, she had stumbled off of the hill as well, rolling downwards, so this led Ash to take action, as he races down the hill at an immense speed, reaching a rock before Macy does, allowing Ash to catch Macy and break her fall, preventing her from crashing her head onto the rock and potentially fucking dying. Simply thinking that Macy would obviously be traumatized after almost dying, he tells her to just stay and rest, declaring that he would go rescue their Pokemon from Team Rocket, as he then leaves and chases after Team Rocket, eventually cutting them off. As for Macy, she wasn't traumatized by almost dying at all, as she was currently overwhelmed, now having a huge crush on Ash due to him saving her life. Damn. Anyways, Ash caught up with Team Rocket eventually, despite them riding away on their bike, as he then cornered them as they were still riding, and sent out his Bayleaf to use Vine Whip to knock the net off of the bike and cut it open with a Razor Leaf, saving Pikachu and Vulpix. Team Rocket don't even have time to get mad at the fact that they had lost their captures, as Bayleaf then sends Team Rocket blasting off with a Vine Whip. With Team Rocket gone, Pikachu and Vulpix happily return to their trainers, as Macy hugs her Vulpix, and Ash praises his Bayleaf, thanking it for taking care of Team Rocket. Misty and Brock then finally catch up, ensuring that Ash was okay, having seen the entire ordeal with Team Rocket, which Ash confirms. Macy then literally grabbed Ash by the hands and tried to drag him away with her, thanking him for saving her Vulpix, and just being awesome as fuck and heroic in general, especially grateful for Ash saving her life. Essentially going on a Brock level simping, but for Ash. She then proceeded to talk about how she was a fire Pokemon specialist, and tried to impress Ash with some of the feats of her fire Pokemon, stating some of the battles they had won, including ones against several Johto gym leaders, since, anyone in the league had to have gotten 8 badges. And she proceeds to try and drag Ash to the Pokemon Center so that they could have lunch together, alone, just the 2 of them. However, Misty stops Macy from dragging Ash away, claiming that fire types sucked ass and that water types were way fucking better, introducing herself as a water Pokemon expert. Macy retorted that water Pokemon sucked ass and fire Pokemon were better, and Misty used this to try and get Ash on her side, explaining like, "Oh my god, did you hear Macy, Ash? She just dissed water Pokemon, how rude," leading Macy to remind Ash that Misty had also dissed her fire Pokemon, as she proceeded to diss water Pokemon again, admitting that they really sucked ass. This just makes Misty more angry, as she insists that water Pokemon were better, as Macy proceeds to insist that fire Pokemon were better, and this fight just keeps fucking escalating, and just keeps getting worse and worse and more annoying, as neither trainer would back down from their standpoint. Misty then angrily questions why the fuck Macy was interested in Ash anyways, leading Macy to come to the conclusion that Misty must have been jealous of her affection towards Ash, since Misty must have had a crush on Ash as well. Although Misty denied this, obviously. Because, it's been an entire recurring theme throughout the series. Misty pretends to hate Ash, but in reality she likes him, blah blah blah. Macy was obviously doubtful of Misty, thinking that she was obviously lying, leaving Misty to come up with another lie, being that she was just Ash's coach, so she cared about his well-being. But Macy retorted that, as Ash's coach, she shouldn't care what Ash did outside of battle, and advised her to stay out of Ash's personal life. This led Misty to question why Macy wanted Ash so bad, and why she cared about what Ash's coach was doing with him, leading Macy to happily admit that she had a crush on Ash, not trying to hide it at all, stating that she already was planning a beautiful life of love with Ash, and she wanted Misty to stay out of their goddamn way. Misty obviously gets angry at this, leading Macy to question once again why Misty cared so much, trying to get it out of her that she actually liked Ash as well. But Misty obviously refused to admit this, leading Macy to just start ignoring Misty as she went up to go talk to Ash about their upcoming battle, talking about how excited she was for it. However, Ash had been made uncomfortable by Macy and Misty's arguing, especially since it was about him, so he decided to walk off and just go train by himself for the battle. Macy decided to leave Ash be, not wanting to annoy him, as she waved goodbye to him, asking him to take her out on a date after the match as a reward if Macy ended up winning. And this just makes Misty mad even more, praying that Ash would win, so Macy would be miserable and wouldn't get to go on a date with Ash, confirming the fact that she was jealous, even though she still refused to admit this. Later that night, Ash had finished training and decided that he should train with his Pokemon that were at Oak's lab, since he planned to use them in his league battles as well, so that he had more coverage against the strong trainers. So he called Professor Oak on a computer back in the Athlete's Pokemon Center, requesting Oak to send over all of his Pokemon from the lab. Oak questioned how Ash was going to keep a hold of all of them at once, leading Ash to reveal that he was going to keep the ones he wasn't currently using on his team of 6 during any of the battles with Nurse Joy, since he trusted Nurse Joy to be able to take care of his Pokemon. So with that, Oak sent over all of the Pokemon of Ash's at his lab, including Muck, Kingler, Bulbasaur, one of the Tauros, Snorlax, and Heracross. Now having all of his Pokemon with him, he began to plan which ones he should take into battle against Macy, as Brock proceeded to flirt with Nurse Joy, only for Misty to drag him off as usual, leaving Ash momentarily alone with Nurse Joy as he continued to debate which Pokemon he should use, and he apparently came to a conclusion, knowing which Mons he was going to use, only for Misty and Brock to return, screaming at Ash, reminding him that he shouldn't make his decision yet because he hadn't analyzed Macy, reminding Ash that he could use the computer in their hotel room to find out what Pokemon Macy had and their accomplishments. So with that, Ash and the gang went back into their hotel room and looked at the computer, with Brock being the one to access the page. The first thing that they saw was that Macy definitely wasn't lying about her love for fire Pokemon, as she had 3 Pokemon in the database that she was known for using, being Vulpix, Slugma, and Quilava, all fire types, with Slugma being the pre-evolution of Magcargo. Misty, wanting to prove that water Pokemon were better to Macy, and wanting Ash to just use water Pokemon in general because she loved water Pokemon, suggests that Ash use entirely water Pokemon against her to beat her ass, although Ash reminds Misty that he couldn't use only water Pokemon as the battles were 3-on-3, and he only had 2 water Pokemon available, being Totodile and Kingler. Misty didn't care, claiming that Ash wouldn't even need a 3rd Pokemon, since water Pokemon would be able to kick fire Pokemon's asses, although Brock was skeptical, advising Ash that he should definitely use a 3rd Pokemon, especially when he looked up more info on Macy's database and found out what another Pokemon that she used was. We didn't get to see what this Pokemon was just yet, but Ash and the gang apparently knew that it would be tough for water Pokemon to beat. Misty and Brock got nervous at this, debating which Pokemon Ash should use against this Mon, with Misty admitting that he definitely shouldn't use a water type against it, although Ash didn't seem that nervous, claiming he would just decide at random. Brock and Misty didn't think this was a good idea, so Ash decided to strategize with Brock and Misty, and they eventually thought they came up with a pretty good counter strategy, as Brock finalized the 3 Pokemon that Ash was going to enter into the battle with Nurse Joy, which she then passed on to the League officials, since apparently you had to do that during the preliminary battles. I guess, I don't know. Ash and the gang then went to sleep, but Ash was so excited for the battle tomorrow that he struggled to sleep. Just like the night before the ceremony. Just wanting the battle to commence right fucking now. The next day, as the crowds were gathering in front of the battle stadium, hyped as fuck for the upcoming battles, especially some kids, Team Rocket were taking advantage of these kids, being the cunts that they were, as they came up with a scam to sell fake badges to them, with them going as far as to open up a concession stand and Meowth and James painting bottle caps to look like fake gym badges, as well as Silver Conference souvenirs, such as those pins that they suggested that Ash should get last episode, thinking that it would be a good idea to actually make them. It took a lot for James to actually agree to do this scam, because he held his bottle caps in very high regard, believing them to be actually valuable. So when Meowth initially went to go give one to Jesse to sell, James angrily stopped him, but Wobbuffet then popped out of Jesse's Pokeball forcibly to try and defend Meowth and Jesse when James yelled at them, leading James to get scared off and agree to help out Jesse and Meowth with the scam. As for Ash, he had returned to the Pokemon Center and gotten his Kingler as he sent it out from its Pokeball, since he obviously was going to use Kingler in his upcoming battle, and he wanted to do a bit of training with it, since it had been a long fucking time since Kingler had battled last, and also Ash just wanted the opportunity to bond with his Kingler, because he felt bad that they never spent any time together, and it had been a long time since they'd seen each other. However, when Ash then took Misty, Brock, and his Kingler outside onto a hill to practice its Crab Hammer attack, another trainer participating in the Silver Conference was training his Voltorb, although during the training, the Voltorb rolled down a hill, shocking Kingler when they made contact with it, since the Voltorb exploded with fear when Kingler tried to grab them to stop them from rolling any further. Ash goes to make sure his Kingler was okay after being shocked, only to find out that it had fainted and was severely injured. So, Ash instantly recalled it into its Pokeball and returned it to Nurse Joy, and as Nurse Joy examined it, she declared that Kingler would need a full day to recover, since Kingler was in such bad condition. As Ash left Kingler with Nurse Joy, he tried to make it onto the bench to calm himself down, but he fell over in despair, realizing that the only water Pokemon he now had available to use against Macy was Totodile, and he doubted that Totodile would be enough, although Misty hoped that it would, because, she thought that water Pokemon were so fucking good. Ash knew that Totodile wouldn't be enough, though, so he debated what he was going to do and who was going to replace Kingler, and also stressed about how he would have to re-register his Pokemon, even though he had already registered them. Thankfully, even though Ash couldn't come up with a replacement for Kingler, his troubles were then calmed, as none other than Officer Jenny showed up in her motorcycle. Ash and the gang initially thought that this was the Officer Jenny of Silvertown, but Ash was very, very delighted when he then saw none other than his Squirtle, the leader of the Squirtle Squad, jump off of Officer Jenny's motorcycle as it parked in front of Ash and the gang, indicating that this was the Officer Jenny in charge of the Squirtle Squad. As Ash's Squirtle took off his Squirtle Squad glasses, Ash ran up to it joyfully, very happy to see his Squirtle after all this goddamn time. Man, I can't believe it returned. That's fucking awesome, dude. Squirtle and Ash then hug a little bit, as Officer Jenny explains that Squirtle was very happy to see Ash as well, explaining that Squirtle had watched Ash light the torch in the opening ceremony at the Silver Conference from her police station on TV, and this motivated Squirtle to want to be on TV as well, and also help out Ash, since he was impressed by his torch skills. So he practically begged Officer Jenny to give him some time off of the Squirtle Squad so he could rejoin Ash and help him fight in the Silver Conference. Essentially, Squirtle wanted to be on TV and help out its old friend. So Jenny obviously obliged, as did the rest of the Squirtle Squad, since they wanted to make their leader happy by giving him a day off, and also thought that they could handle themselves. Ash was surprised by this, as he remembered how all of the Squirtle needed Ash's Squirtle to lead them, otherwise they would be fucking uncoordinated as fuck. And this led Officer Jenny to reveal what the rest of the Squirtle Squad was doing now, stating that they were training back at her police station. Adding that because of Ash's Squirtle's leadership, all of the other Squirtle were now able to handle themselves. Although Jenny also clarified that the rest of the Squirtle Squad weren't the only Squirtle that had gotten stronger, as Ash's Squirtle had gotten strong as well. Hearing of his Squirtle's improvement, when his Squirtle was already strong as fuck, only made Ash want to use Squirtle even more, and it would be perfect since Squirtle was a water type that he needed. So he made sure to check with Jenny one more time that it was really okay to take Squirtle away from its duties, with Jenny stating that it wasn't even up to her because she saw that Squirtle really wanted to battle with Ash again, which Squirtle confirmed as it gave a thumbs up and smiled, ready to battle. So this led Ash to request Brock to help him change the registry of his Pokemon, and of course swap out Kingler for Squirtle. And Brock eventually agreed to do this, after, of course, he flirted with Officer Jenny, and Misty had dragged him off. As Ash then went into the stadium for his battle, he thanked his Squirtle for joining him, explaining that he was a last-minute addition because he initially had Kingler, but then something happened to it. And this just made Squirtle want to battle even harder, wanting to win in honor of Kingler. Ash and Macy then both arrived at the B Stadium, with them, of course, taking their opposite sides on the field, as Professor Oak, Tracy, Ash's mom, and Mr. Mime watched the battle on TV. Just like with Ash's battle against Salvador, there was a randomly generated computer outcome that would determine whether Ash or Macy was supposed to send out their Pokemon and make the first attack first, and a red light then flashed on the computer screen, and since Macy was the red competitor and Ash was the green one, this meant that Macy was supposed to send out her Pokemon first and go in for the first attack once Ash sent out his Pokemon. So the battle then began as Macy sent out her Slugma and Ash sent out his Totodile, with Macy going for a flamethrower first, leading Totodile to counter with a water gun, dodging the flamethrower and extinguishing it. However, all the water gun did was extinguish the flamethrower, not hit Slugma, as Macy commented that she expected that Ash would send out a water Pokemon to counter, and therefore she came up with a strategy, telling Ash not to underestimate fire Pokemon, as she had Slugma use a double team to create illusions, and therefore the water gun instead hit one of these illusions as opposed to the real Slugma. Totodile tried more water guns, but Slugma simply created more illusionist copies, as it was able to therefore dodge all of the water guns, and then sneak up on Totodile, going for a flamethrower. However, since Slugma was so focused on going for the flamethrower, it couldn't keep up all the illusions, revealing to Totodile the location of the real Slugma. So he went for another water gun, and even though Macy ordered Slugma to use double team again to confuse Totodile and dodge the water gun made contact before more illusions could be created. Macy was impressed that Slugma wasn't down yet, but since it was a fire type, it was of course severely injured by the water gun, so Macy decided to substitute out her Slugma for her next Pokemon, who was the surprise Pokemon that Ash and the gang had saw earlier, Macy's Electabuzz. Macy thought that her Electabuzz would obviously catch Ash and the gang off guard, because she thought that they would never anticipate her to use a Pokemon that would do good against water types, even though that was her fucking plan, because she knew that all of her opponents would try and use water types against her, so, she had something to counter that. Much to Macy's shock, though, since Brock had went on the database and found out about Electabuzz, him and Ash had come up with a plan to counter it, as Ash sent out his Phanpy, recalling his Totodile, since it was a ground type, being good against electric types. Misty and Ash then admitted that it was mostly because of Brock that Ash was able to have this strategy, as they both thanked him for his genius to look further into the database. Then, the battle between Phanpy and Electabuzz began. Macy was unaware of Phanpy being a ground type, so she was extremely annoyed when she had Electabuzz use Thunderbolt, and it was completely useless against Phanpy. Seeing how Electabuzz was useless against Phanpy now, though, she decided to instantly substitute it out, back for her Slugma instead. Ash, seemingly not knowing that ground types were super good against fire types, still decided to leave Phanpy in, and had it instantly go for an Earthquake, which stopped Slugma from moving towards Phanpy. With Slugma now disabled, Phanpy then immediately followed up with a Rollout. But even though Slugma couldn't move, it was still able to fire out a flamethrower from where it was sitting. But Phanpy was able to severely lessen the damage of this by going in for a Defense Curl to defend itself. Phanpy continues to use Defense Curl as Slugma goes for a Body Slam, meaning that Phanpy blocked that as well. And with that, Phanpy then goes in for yet another Earthquake, which causes Macy to panic, as Slugma was now having even more trouble moving than before, to the point where she couldn't order it to do any more attacks, much to Misty's delight, as she obviously wanted to see Macy lose, and Slugma did end up losing, as Phanpy finished it off with a takedown attack, knocking it out, forcing Macy to recall it. As the screen then showed that Ash still had 2 Pokemon available, while Macy had lost, or rather, Ash technically had 3 Pokemon available, while Macy had lost 1. Ash was immensely happy to have taken the victory, as the referee of the battle declared, while Macy, on the other hand, was nervous that she would lose and not get a date with Ash, so she decided to send out what she claimed to be her ace fire type, Quilava, the evolved form of Cyndaquil. Despite Quilava supposedly being strong, Misty assured Ash that he should do a good job, since she knew that ground types were good against fire types as well, so therefore, no matter who Ash chose, he would do good. Ash figured Phanpy was on a roll, so he left Phanpy out and had it use Rollout, but is then forced out of the rollout position as it was hit by a Flame Wheel from Quilava. Macy laughs, claiming that her Quilava was too strong, and had Quilava hit Phanpy again with a quick attack, severely hurting Phanpy at this point, but Phanpy was determined not to give up. As it charged towards Quilava with the toughest takedown it could muster, only to be stopped by yet another Flame Wheel from Quilava, which was so strong that Phanpy had fainted, as the referee declared this, stating that both trainers had now lost 1 Mon, so it was now tied. As Ash recalled Phanpy, Brock and Misty were immensely surprised that Ash lost, despite having the type advantage, as Ash then sends out his Totodile back into the fray. Ash figured that with Totodile being a water type, this would be an easy win, and Macy thought this as well, as this led her to recall her Quilava and send out Electabuzz instead, leading Brock to panic, stating that Ash only had 2 Pokemon left that were both water types, so they would struggle immensely against Electabuzz, so Ash could be fucked. Ash didn't give up though, stating he knew that he could win somehow, as he had Totodile use Water Gun, leading Macy to poke a little fun at Ash, teasing him for how he just used the same fucking move over and over and over, and how Water Gun was a weak-ass move, as she had Electabuzz block the Water Gun by using a Light Screen. Ash took this comment by Macy to heart, as he switched up Totodile's moves, instead ordering it to go for a Headbutt. However, as Totodile went in for the Headbutt, it actually got punched on the head, as Electabuzz went for Thunder Punch, sending Totodile flying against the stadium wall, knocking it out, leading Macy to jump for joy with her Electabuzz at the win, as the referee declared that Ash was now down 2 Pokemon, and would be forced to send out his last one. Misty and Brock were panicking, as Ash somewhat was as well, being forced to send out his Squirtle, even though it was a water type. Regardless of his hesitancies though, Ash did in fact send Squirtle out, after recalling his Totodile and apologizing to it for forcing it to battle an Electabuzz that it was weak against. The battle between Squirtle and Electabuzz then began, as Electabuzz started off with a Thunder Punch, combined with a Thunderbolt. However, much to Macy's surprise, Squirtle actually managed to counter the Thunder Punch and Thunderbolt with its Water Gun. Macy questioned how the fuck this was possible, as the audience did as well, not thinking that a water move could have overpowered an electric move. But Officer Jenny, who was also watching the battle from the stands with the crowd, was not surprised at all, as she remarked how the reasoning for Squirtle being able to counter an electric move was because of the immense training that it and the Squirtle Squad had been doing, especially practicing their Water Gun to be good firefighters. Officer Jenny then smiled, knowing from watching Squirtle's training that it had even more tricks up its sleeve, such as its fast speed to be able to dodge, and knew that Squirtle would eventually implement these new techniques. And she continued to cheer Squirtle on, as Squirtle used its speed to dodge another Thunder Punch from Electabuzz. Macy was still shocked by Squirtle's speed, so she didn't know what to do, as she just kept ordering Electabuzz to fire more Thunder Punches, which Squirtle dodged every time, and eventually hit another Water Gun, jumping in the air while doing so to avoid Electabuzz's Thunder Punch. However, Electabuzz didn't go for Thunder Punch, as it instead went for Iron Tail to deflect the Water Gun, leading Squirtle to try and sneak up on Electabuzz from behind so it could shoot it with a Water Gun from behind, but Electabuzz spotted this, as it used Iron Tail a second time to make Squirtle trip and hit him. Although, Electabuzz went a little wild with its second Iron Tail, and its tail wrapped around and hit Electabuzz in the process as well. Macy didn't panic though, as Squirtle was still reeling from being hit mid-air by the Iron Tail as it was falling to the ground. But while it was falling to the ground, it turned around and hit Electabuzz square in the chest with a Water Gun, mostly blocking Electabuzz from using a Thunder Punch, although Squirtle did get hit a little bit, but it was able to recover from the jolt and regain full concentration immediately after this. Brock and Misty were very impressed by this, while Officer Jenny was proud of Squirtle for using its good acrobatic skills to flip and use a water gun on the Electabuzz while it was still in the air. Electabuzz wasn't ready to back down yet, though, as it then went in for a Thunderbolt on Squirtle, but Squirtle responded by dodging the Thunderbolt and using a Skull Bash on Electabuzz to knock it out, forcing Macy to recall Electabuzz, as the referee then declared, showing the screen with Ash and Macy, that Macy only had her Quilava left, and Ash only had his Squirtle left. So left with no choice, Macy sent out her Quilava. Due to Ash just winning the last round, he was extremely confident that he could beat Quilava, as he told Squirtle to use another water gun, and although the water gun initially made contact with Quilava, Quilava used a combination of Flamethrower and Flame Wheel to deflect the water gun, and avoid most of the damage from it. Macy then had Quilava use Swift, but Squirtle countered the Swift with a Bubble, forcing the two attacks to collide. Macy was about to use Smokescreen so that she could have her Quilava sneak up on Squirtle, but she didn't need to, as the collision of the Swift and Bubble created smoke. Unfortunately, since Quilava wasn't prepared for the smoke like it would have been if it administered it, this led Quilava to be caught off guard by the smoke, allowing Squirtle to jump out of the smoke and hit it with a water gun and also go in for a bubble attack. However, before the bubble could make full contact, Quilava used Quick Attack to send Squirtle back, knocking it down. Before Squirtle was knocked down, though, it tried its best to use a Body Slam to fall down onto Quilava, but unfortunately it missed, as it merely landed on the ground on its back. And with the smoke now gone, thanks to the bubble and water gun, and Squirtle struggling to get back up, Quilava saw an opportunity to use a Flame Wheel, as it went in for one. Ash and the gang panicked, as Squirtle couldn't get back up, but suddenly Squirtle, determined to win, decided to use Withdraw to retreat back into its shell. So not only did it dodge the Flame Wheel, but it was able to use Hydro Pump since it was in its shell, spinning around while doing so to hit Quilava with the immense water, but also the weight of its own spinning body, knocking Quilava out after multiple seconds of Squirtle's fast spinning. With that, the referee then declared that Quilava was unable to battle, and therefore Macy had no Pokemon left, as that meant that Ash was the winner, as Ash jumped for joy, and the crowd went wild, and Officer Jenny smiled, happy that Squirtle had proven that it was still able to battle alongside Ash. As for Macy, she recalled her Quilava and thanked it for doing such a good job, as Macy then walked over to Ash and thanked him as well for the awesome battle, congratulating him on the victory. Misty, Brock, and Officer Jenny had walked up to Ash by this point, congratulating him as well, with Jenny especially congratulating Squirtle, but everyone was shocked to see that Macy wasn't a sore loser whatsoever, and had congratulated Ash and was super nice about the loss, leading Macy to state that all she cared about was that it was a good battle, and it was a challenging one for her and her Pokemon. Also admitting that she didn't mind losing to someone like Ash because she knew that he was an awesome person, implying that she definitely still liked him. Ash then thanked Macy for the compliments and the battle, bowing for her, explaining that he should be the one thanking Macy, since it was because of Macy using fire types that Ash and Squirtle were able to reunite and shine as bright as they did during the battle, and Ash really appreciated this, as he had really missed battling with Squirtle, and Squirtle had really missed battling with him. Meanwhile, as for Team Rocket, they had actually managed to do a successful scam, as they had sold out of all of their stock of fake badges and fake souvenirs at their concession stand. Jessie and Meowth were particularly happy with this, debating what the fuck they should spend all of this money on that they now had, and James was initially excited as well, but when Team Rocket all started arguing about what they should spend their money on, James realized that they actually didn't have enough money, since if they did, then they wouldn't have to argue about what to spend their money on, and they could just buy anything they wanted. So James suggested that they continue to sell even more bottle caps tomorrow as fake badges when the battles resumed, with James assuring Meowth and Jessie that he still had plenty more spare bottle caps, that he wasn't planning on remodding, but he definitely would to get more money, up until the point where Team Rocket would hopefully be able to triple their current profit. Jessie and Meowth supported this idea as Team Rocket cheered, excited for tomorrow. Although James did kind of freak out Jessie and Meowth at the fact that he had so many bottle caps. Meanwhile, back with Ash and the gang, they were currently looking at the current standings of Group H, the group that Ash was in, learning that Ash had won 3 points due to his win against Macy, with Brock reminding Ash that he now only needed a win or a draw, depending on how the next battle between Macy and the other trainer in Group H would unfold. Because if Macy ended up losing that battle, then that would therefore take Macy out, and it would only leave 2 competitors left. But if Macy ended up winning, it could make the competition a little bit more complicated. But essentially, Ash would only need 1 more win, or a draw, at the very least. However, Ash stated that he wouldn't even think about drawing. He would always win, no matter what. Essentially, Ash only needed 1 more point at the minimum to win, but if Macy or Vincent ended up scoring a win, then they could tie with Ash. Nonetheless, Brock and Misty congratulated Ash on his current standings in Group H, as Macy then showed up, and reveals that her Slugma had evolved into Macargo as she sent it out, and she quickly hugs Macargo, explaining that it would always be a reminder of her love for him, since it was because of her battle with Ash that Slugma had gained enough experience to evolve, so this had only made Macy fall in love with Ash even more. It turns out that Ash and Brock had thought that Macy was joking about loving Ash this entire time, so they were extremely surprised that it appeared that Macy actually did like Ash after all. Ash was obviously awkward with women, not knowing what to do, so he simply said that he wanted to go train for his next battle, wanting to get away from Macy as soon as possible. And Macy, not wanting to upset her crush, declared that she was going to go do the same thing and train for her next battle in the preliminaries, stating that she would postpone her and Ash's date, especially since she had lost the battle, and she had only made Ash promise to go on a date if she won. So this just made Macy even more determined to win her next battle and potentially advance to the main tournament so that she could prove to Ash how strong she was, and therefore maybe Ash would go on a date with her. Yeah, I doubt that, man, because Ash is the type of guy to not really care about chicks. He was more focused on winning the goddamn Silver Conference, baby. Anyways, the episode ends with Macy and Ash leaving in opposite directions to go train for their next battles, both wanting to win, as Misty and Brock wish Ash luck with this said training and his next battle, which would happen next episode, with Ash hopefully having some luck due to the burning hole of flame which was still watching over the conference.